I have made a huge mistake. I went ahead and asked for a mailbag questions. 111 questions later, here we are. But obviously, a lot of you have had questions about what's going on. I will do my best to answer. I am not answering that many. I've pared this down to those who ask questions on a regular basis. So we're going to get into it on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Thursday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Just dealt with a lot of extra stress because in order to make it to College Park, I was like, where's my check-in? I don't have my check-in. And it wouldn't let me log in to the airline, and I find out somehow it was booked for like some random 2 middle days in December. So $300 later, got that all sorted out. But nonetheless, I will be your man on the ground in this week, which means that Friday is going to be we'll do an episode somehow, some way in Baltimore. That's the plan. But for now, we're going to get to the mailbag. We're going to get to your questions. We'll start off with the leaders and best, starting with James Gruddup at James Gruddup 6, shattering all your question podcast records. Yes. Most I think we had was like 44 or something like that, not 111. Are you surprised Michigan's only played 3 corners last week? Do you think they go portal shopping for another one next year? No, not necessarily. I think that, you've got guys that are developing. Whether or not they end up being those guys, I don't know. But I think that they've, keep in mind, like Amarian Walker had injuries on top of developing. Will Johnson is coming back. There's other guys that are kind of in the wings that kind of feel like they're redshirting, like Cody Jones or whatever. I have to check his snap counts. I don't know. Maybe he's redshirt. I feel like, and DJ Waller, they're really high on him. So maybe they do go to the portal, but I feel like they think that they've got a lot that they can develop. Josh Barr at Jadicky. Tap. Is this thing on? Yeah, because we haven't had one of these in a while. Do you find it weird, as I do, how rivals are calling for the death penalty over checks notes? Level 2 violations from a single staffer, all while some teams ignore level 1 violations like it's a day job. It's because they're in fever dream, right? Like they believe that there are people inside the Michigan circles even that believe things are worse than they are, right? Again, the truth will set you free, and the truth is it was a single staffer. And I've confirmed this multiple levels here. And yet, like, the problem is the people that believe that this is going to be something completely different. They believe that this was Jim Harbaugh knew about it. He just instructed it, how to do it, and then benefited from it. That it was a pervasive scheme that happened, that there was point shaving and Vegas is involved and all kinds of other stuff here. So I'm not surprised that that's where they're at, because that's just what they're getting, and they would assume that they're right because they've had the beat on this whole story weeks before it even came out. That there's other things they believe that Michigan had Ohio State's practice film. Again, I've asked that question so many times of so many people, and I've yet to get one person that's like pulling at their collar. It's just not the truth. How about Jawan's squad so far? I mean, impressive. 3-0, really good win against St. John's. They've played 2 teams that are really good in St. John's and UNC Asheville, and they've just been dominant. I think that I wondered if taking Hunter Dickinson away was as a crutch in the inside, if that was going to maybe help the team overall. It kind of feels like that's the case. My brother in metal, Michael Wolf at MWolf21. Do you have any concerns about the Michigan defense stopping TreVeyon Henderson? I do a little bit, and I spoke about this on Bleacher Report about a half hour ago. Because Michigan, we saw it against Penn State, and we saw it against Minnesota in particular, that they have struggled on first down to stop the run at times. Certainly them being able to stop the run on first down against Penn State on a couple key drives was the kind of the difference. But they need to keep Ohio State off schedule. And if Ohio State's able to hand off to TreVeyon Henderson and get 5 yards, that's not good. So what Michigan needs to do essentially is to take him away. That's what they did. I mean, they didn't have TreVeyon Henderson last year. It was Mayan Williams and Chip Trayanum that were the main culprits. This year it would be Travion Henderson and Chip training him. You got to get Ryan Day to get away from the run game altogether, because that's when Michigan would be able to thrive. Weirdly, even though the passing game is the bread and butter for Ohio State. So, yeah, I have some concerns, but I also feel like the majority of the time they've done well. I don't know that they're going to run similar type of power schemes necessarily. They seem to be more zone. I could be completely wrong on that. That's just my own observation. And that would be kind of playing into Michigan's hands to some degree as well. Jimmy Whitner at Jimmy Whitner 1. How different is your current assessment of the team now as opposed to your preseason assessment? Well, the run game clearly is not as dominant as I thought it was going to be. Obviously, it was good against Penn State, and 5 yards a carry. But I thought we would see more of that type of play mixed in with the pass game. I think Michigan's been more adept at the pass game. I think part of it, too, that surprises me is teams are they're just trying to stop the run, even though the pass game's been generally very good. This was the only game where Penn State's like, we're going to stop the run, and Michigan's like, bet. I mean, kind of literally. So, number 2, can you believe how fast this season has gone by? I mean, it's every year. It's before you know it. It's, it goes like, man, a couple weeks from now, the season's starting. I can't believe it. To here we are, the season's almost over. It's every single year. That's why you got to kind of cherish every single week. If Michigan doesn't beat Ohio State, then you're looking at 1 more game instead of potentially 3. That's just a wild difference. Season would be really over, pretty much. And no one's going to care about a bowl game if they lose to Ohio State. Put it that way. Number 3, how is and where is Zuri? She is out there somewhere, probably staring out the window looking for a train. She wants to be outside, but I don't let her outside when I'm doing these anymore, because the last time I did a podcast and I came back, went outside, and her whole tie-out was gone, and she's down the road being tended to by a construction worker. So, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. Jonathan Joseph at JJoseph2156. Any players expected to leave after this year that you could see staying another year? I mean, Donovan Edwards is one of them. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy could decide. I don't know if he will or not. Roman Wilson could be a guy that decides, like, hey, I'm going to try it another year. I could see Junior Colson being that guy as well, but I guess we'll find out, right? Because it's not what's happened up to this point is what matters, is what happens from here forward. That's when those decisions are going to be made, right? If Donovan Edwards runs for 600 yards in the next 3 games, then he's good as gone. But if he runs for 50, then probably staying, right? That's how that will end up working. Finishing us out in segment 1, Spencer Whitmore at Spencer Whitmore. The mailbag is alive. If you've been busy or something, your expectations for the rest of the season, including bowl games and playoffs. Also, who would be your top 4? I have Michigan at least going to the national championship game. Jim Harbaugh not being on the sidelines for Ohio State could change things. How much, I'm not sure. Is Jim Harbaugh worth 7 points, 14 points, 21 points in that game? I'm not sure. Doesn't mean Michigan will lose, but that could play a big difference. I think that Michigan would obviously win the Big Ten championship at that point, and then I think that they'll, assuming they don't match up against Georgia in week 1, I mean, they very well could. I think they'll at least make it to the championship game. I think. But it all depends on matchups as far as that's concerned. So right now, my top 4 would be Georgia. I would have Michigan 1, honestly. I could be wrong on all of this, so don't clip this and be like Isaiah said. Like I'm willing to admit that I could be wrong. I would have Michigan 1, who's been the most complete team, and I think after beating Penn State, that they're right there. Georgia 2. Georgia at least has the win over Mizzou. That's at least equal to Penn State in terms of wins, but Michigan's been more complete more often. Number 3, I know that a lot of people would say that Washington's had some down games, but they still look really good to me. And I feel like they've had their moments. And then I would have to have Florida State, even though they probably are the worst of the undefeated. The LSU win is not stacked up quite as it was, but they are undefeated. So that's what that would be. All right, we're going to continue on with more of your questions here in just a moment. Before we do, passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. I'm sitting here a little alarmed that the camera stopped at one point. Now I'm like hyper focused on making sure that it doesn't stop again. And also, I kind of brightened this up a little too much. Oh well, that's where we're at. Let's get into the rest of it. As our Victor's Valiant all the way through to the end. No Blue Crew, even though it's gonna say Blue Crew on the side because we're just not doing your honorary Blue Crew, but you're also the Victor's Valiant. That's how it goes. Jim at Jim in the North. What is the difference in O-line predictions versus what's happening? They are good, but no longer seem like the best. Did they just not develop as expected? The Lions have the push Michigan seemed to have last year. Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I think it's not just that. It's just that last year teams were more like, okay, we're going to try to stay balanced defensively, and you might be able to run the ball a little bit, but we're not going to let J.J. McCarthy beat us, where it feels like this year teams are more like, we're going to do everything in our power to keep the run game from beating us and force JJ to do it because it works for TCU. And so, every other team is going to try that until they hopefully make that work, right? We haven't seen teams backed off too much. And then you do still have some development issues where it feels like guys have whiffed on blocks. I don't know why Michigan continues to run those outside zone stretch plays because it just seems like they've never worked. Then this week they finally went off guard, and that seemed like that was like the secret sauce. Like, why haven't you been doing this the whole time? How hard would it be for Michigan to leave the Big Ten sooner than later? I'm stunned Petitti is so foolish with this. I'm not really sure as far as logistics. I'd imagine they'd have to be in the Big Ten next year as well and then go, do whatever. I don't, again, know that's going to happen because I feel like if it comes down to Michigan or Petitti, Michigan's going to win, right? Like, it would seem pretty absurd for the Big Ten to decide that it's going to stand behind its commissioner who will be likely gone before too long and lose Michigan in that. So I don't know, but I would say that. Just a shout out. Your coverage of this has been superlative. Best Michigan podcast. Well, I thank you. I appreciate that a lot, Jim. Perry Mitchell at Perry Mitchell 08. If Chip Kelly's fired and JJ moves on, how would you feel about Harbaugh going after Dante Moore in the portal should he enter? I think there's other guys I would maybe go after because, Michigan's got, some guys that it's trying to go after. I mean, obviously, like, I think Dante would probably be more likely to go to Oregon anyway because that's where he was originally committed. Didn't really seem like he was feeling the love, but I mean, obviously Michigan could sell him in as something different. I think that, Owen Pastel, who writes for me at Wolverines Wire, said Malik Murphy could be that guy. I know there's also rumors that Arch Manning is considering, moving on if Quinn Ewers decides to stick around Texas. I think you could get a guy like that, Michael Pratt from Tulane. There's a lot of different options that I would maybe take over Dante Moore because he still feels like he needs some development. Like, he's not going to be plug and play. The Rican Raider at Hamstand 87. Have you tried the allergy shots for field turf? I know this is what everyone wants to know. No, but I have tried. Rich Nelson hooked me up with Allermy, and that's working a little bit. Not like great, but it's working better than anything else. Real question, can we get this contract signed already? I think they're going to wait. They don't want to anger the powers that be that much more by being that defiant. I think they're just going to sit on that until some of this at least gets resolved, I would imagine, at this point. Anton Sesmita Mangala at Sesmita Mangala, no question. Just a big thank you for all the clarity during this. Your reports were very helpful in sorting out the noise from the news. Well, I'll add to that since you don't have a question. I know that there's a lot of people freaking out. I've got a lot of questions. Again, nothing has changed in my eyes. Everything out that was going to come out about Connor Stallions has come out. It's still the same thing. The coaches didn't know, and people below him, did. It was not an orchestrated anything. It was self-funded, as I mentioned earlier. Could there be some other little twist and turns and whatever, or could they say that we have proof or whatever of something else? They could. I don't believe that's the case though. And I've sourced this pretty well. I'm Patman at _GD_Patman. I've seen some memes floating around, some with the On3 logo stating Ohio State is now under investigation by the NCAA. Have you heard anything to substantiate that, or are these just some low-level trolling in your opinion? It is some just trolling. I mean, Do I think that if everything does in fact come out, if everything that I know to be fact, not to be conjecture, speculation, would Ohio State then also probably be under investigation? Yes. I don't say that lightly. I'm not saying that to troll them. That is what I believe would be the case. Now, as far as are they under investigation right now, I don't believe so. And it could take some. Would they for sure be under NCAA violations or investigation rather? Maybe not, because the NCAA might just decide that it's terribly incurious about all of it, which would be a bad precedent to set. I'll say that. Jacob Shavaria at Shavaria, who asked a bunch of questions, thankfully, on the Bleacher Report show that I just did, which was good because I had exhausted everything that I felt like I had to say going in. Has anything been said about Michigan not welcoming game day for the game? Would love for them to be denied. I believe they're going to let them come, unfortunately. Right, so that's just what it is. Has this been a record revenue month for you? Well, I'm sure it will be. I won't know for a while, unfortunately. But as far as views and listens and all of that, yes, it's been a huge record. So thank you to all of you who've tuned in. Done my best to try to bring you as much accurate info as I could. And that's why we've pivoted very strongly to the inside info after all of you who have been watching or listening for a long time know that I'll throw in some inside info here and there, but it's been, it's like maybe once every few weeks during the season, and otherwise it's not. I try to give you something literally every day, even if you haven't realized it. I'm not the one at William Cawthorne 9. I live in the DMV area, so I don't have access to some things. Is there any way you can help me get that vest that Sharon Moore wears? I would imagine just go to MDen. I would imagine it's on MDen. If not, then it might just be team specific. But MDen.com will help you out there. With everything else going on, do you now think it's championship or bust? I thought that from the beginning. I don't think it's anything now. I think it's already been championship or bust, right? This is your best option before the playoff expands. This is a way to get done. And, you've got this opportunity. You've got to take advantage of it. They had an opportunity last year. They squandered. So, yes, I do feel like it's championship or bust, and I feel like it's been that for a while. Couple more here in segment 2. James Kovalevsky at Coach_Kovo. We often hear the NCAA could become obsolete, but what exactly would it take for the NCAA to no longer be the governing body for college sports? An agreement from the top conference ADs, big TV networks. I would imagine that's part of it. Also, with that filing that's been upheld, to continue the court case about back pay for student athletes, that would probably do it as well. But all of the above. What would change with no NCAA? Who would decide upon and hand down punishments? Well, you're not going to like this. Probably the conferences. So you'd be in a situation where a Tony Petitti would have a lot more he could control than he already has. That's not what you want either. You would hope that it would just go to the college football playoff and that they would be a little bit better and smarter, but there's nothing good here as far as that's concerned, unfortunately. Finishing us out in segment 2, Clark at Blue for Life 8. Any word on JJ's ankle? I know he played the rest of the game, was running around the game to celebrate, but wasn't sure if that was maybe why the offense ran the whole second half. I think he was fine. He seemed fine. He wasn't icing anything. I had some questions about this after the game, but no, it didn't seem like there was anything wrong with him. I think everything's fine there as far as that's concerned. All right, we're going to continue on with more from the Victors Valiant, a.k.a. the Blue Crew, for this episode in just a moment. But before we do, score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. I mean, that's just a heck of a deal right there. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time than now to get in on the action. From spreads to overs, unders, player props, you get paid instantly, all kinds of things that are just absolutely wonderful about FanDuel. The app is super easy to use. There's all those betting options I just gave you, so highly recommend it. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. So big sorry to all the people that ask questions that aren't getting in here. We just can't go 100-something deep. We can't do a week of mailbag either. So I appreciate all your questions. I appreciate the enthusiasm. It's just not going to happen this time. This is why I was holding off, because I'm sure it would have been 300 if it was like last week or the week before. And it would have been a lot of like, there were some trolling ones that I saw in there, but for the most part, I didn't even read a lot of your guys' questions. I just kind of looked for the names that I know are asking questions regularly or have asked questions regularly over the course of the last 5 years. So that's how we decided on who got it, right? These are people that ask questions on a regular basis. So some of them might not be the hardest hitting questions, but that this is what the people are asking that are asking on a weekly basis. So that's what it is. Sean Stites at Sean Stites 16, probability based on your sources and intel that Michigan is granted the TRO. I don't know at this point, to be honest. I could, this is how you can tell when I'm telling you something is the truth. I'll tell you when I don't know something, and that is something I don't know. I spoke to one of my sources this morning about something else. They weren't super confident in the first place it was going to be granted in a timely fashion. I don't know. We'll see. Things are kind of convoluted at the moment from what I'm not getting the type of intel I was a week ago because things are convoluted, not because they're not telling me, because they just are a little bit more convoluted than they were. That's the best I can give you because I don't have good answers at the moment, to be honest. John Diadamo at John Diadamo, wondering about the timing of the extension and if it will be signed soon. We're closer to that time of the year when Harbaugh talks to NFL teams. I think it's going to have to go in the offseason just by design, just because I think that if they thumb the nose at the Big Ten in particular and said we're extending Harbaugh, I think that would anger the Big Ten more than. So I think it's smart to just kind of hold off as much as you want them to thumb the nose at the Big Ten. Jared Book at Book's World. Or Bauk, sorry. It says down if you decide to use my question, the name is pronounced Bauk. So Jared Bauk, Bauk's World. Do you think Ohio State's lack of explosion on offense this year will cause Michigan to change its defensive game plan? Maybe more straight up man as opposed to soft coverage in between the 20s? I in a way, I hope so. But I mean, you also have to account for, you do have to still account for the receivers and don't want them to get over you. I think maybe some mix. I wouldn't be surprised if there was more pattern matching and things of that nature and switching things up regularly just to keep them off balance. I think keeping them off balance is the most important thing because Kyle McCord is not CJ Stroud, and you still need to keep things ahead of you and try to force them into field goal opportunities instead of touchdowns. No, it hasn't been explosive, but Marvin Harrison can take the top off the defense in a hurry, right? So you just want to stay on him. Maybe you do something where you're man with him, zone everywhere else. They did something similar with Don Brown in 2016. Half the field was man, half the field was zone. Something like that would probably suffice. Michigan 45-23 at Wolverine Wise. What should Michigan's game plan be on both sides of the ball for OSU and why? Well, I just gave you defensively. Offensively, I don't think it should be anything particularly different than what it's kind of been throughout the year, especially like what is Ohio State trying to do? Now, Ohio State's going to try to keep you from scoring touchdowns, right? That's kind of what they've done. They've kept teams out of the end zone. So maybe you take a couple of shots that you haven't taken all year. I do know that one of the questions that I got that didn't make it was someone asked did Michigan do what had expected it to do against Penn State, having a parallel offense? No, it didn't. So there's a lot more to the playbook that we haven't seen. So I would go into the bag of things that they practiced all year that they haven't necessarily felt like they needed to use. That would be the other part. Defensively, keep everything in front of you, but also see if you can get pressure on McCord with 4, and then try to keep everything in front of you and just keep him guessing, and try to bait him into some things would be the other part. Generic at ERKJ72. Michigan scores over under 42 versus Maryland. Final score prediction. I haven't figured that out yet. In part because I don't know if Jim Harbaugh, I would say without Jim Harbaugh, I'll say 37-10. With Jim Harbaugh, I would add a touchdown. I would say 44-10. So under without Jim, over with. That's where I'm at. Rich Nelson at Rich Nelson 1. Do you think Michigan opens up the passing game against Maryland or continues to play bully ball and puts nothing on tape for Ohio State? Is your answer different based on who's coaching? Yes. I think if it's no Jim Harbaugh, then I think that they will try to play bully ball against Maryland a little bit more. Get that run game going, maybe mix in a few passes here and there. But I think that if Jim Harbaugh's on the sideline, all bets are off, and they're going to do a bunch of wild stuff, potentially. Maybe not a bunch of wild stuff, but, looking more like it did throughout the season. Finishing us out, Joe Slatter at Coach Slatter. Do you anticipate Michigan will release evidence that Ohio State is tied to the PI firm or any other rumored information that they have to expose OSU or other schools? Simple answer to that, yes. I do. When? I don't know. I've heard as soon as this week. I would be surprised by that. I think it will be off season, personally. That's just me. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I know, I'm sorry. It's only like 26 minutes when this very well could have been a very, very long episode, but I got stuffs to do. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.